Was this then Satyagraha? Did the Congress come away victorious at the end of the day, making a big political point? Or was this just the ultimate proof of sycophancy, that instead of rallying around, say, inflation, price rise, they've picked Rahul Gandhi to rally around? Joining me on this broadcast, we've got Sambit Patra from the BJP, we've got Supriya Shrineth, national spokesperson of the Congress, and I have two legal eagles joining me from two different perspectives. We've got Aman Lekhi, senior advocate in the Supreme Court, former additional Solicitor General, and squaring off against him, Sanjay Hegde, senior advocate in the Supreme Court. So let me go across to Supriya Shrineth first, because the charge that the BJP levels is the charge of political sycophancy. So instead of picking an issue of concern to the Aam Aadmi, take for example the issue of inflation, the Congress has jumped on trying to protect the Gandhi family. And there are multiple questions, and we'll take them one by one. For example, the question that Smriti Irani asked in a press conference, taking a loan from a Kolkata-based shell company by the name of Dotex Merchandise, which is giving a loan of 1 crore rupees. And these are questions that the Gandhi family and Rahul Gandhi need to answer. Why do you think this big political protest that you staged through the day, congressmen rallying around Rahul Gandhi, was better than, say, the Congress trying to protest against price rise?
So first things first, I think because you quoted a union minister leveling charges, it's only fair that I answer those charges first and then come around to why we must not protest on the streets of Delhi, which is our constitutional right, quite frankly, and has been won through a well-fought independence. Smriti Irani goes on to quote Dotex. Yes, a loan of 1 crore was taken from Dotex, an RPG group company. It's an RPG group company. It's a very, RPG is a listed entity. You know about the Goenka group. A 1 crore loan was taken at an interest rate of 14%. That money was taken by check and returned by check. So I don't think the minister perhaps understands financial transactions. Money was taken by check, returned by check. 14% interest rate is the rate at which that money was taken. It is also a fact that the BJP is leveling charges against the RPG group. Now, if you have an issue with Dotex, please go ahead and investigate them. Do not level shell company charges against RPG group, which is a listed
Okay, so
entity.
pause that for a second, because that's a very specific response, and I'm coming back to you, Supriya, for more.
Yes.
Since the charge of Dotex was leveled by the BJP, Sambit Patra, 14% interest paid, amount taken by check, paid by check, and this is not a shell company but belongs to a reputed industrial house. If this is true, then was the BJP firing blanks in the hope that something would connect?
See, coming to the specifics, Rahul, as far as whether this is sycophancy or Satyagraha.
No, we leave that for a moment. One second. We leave Satyagraha or... No, one second. Sambit. We leave the issue of Satyagraha and sycophancy for a moment. I'm asking you about the principal point of attack by the BJP about Dotex.
I'm coming to the specifics of Dotex. I'm coming to the specifics of Dotex itself. Remember one thing, we over here, the lawyers present in the panel, nor the spokespersons present in the panel are the deciding authority. Whether it was taken by check, whether it was returned or not, because I was hearing your own correspondent right now from ED, who said that there were certain uncomfortable questions to Rahul Gandhi about Dotex, and Rahul Gandhi said that I am not aware of the fact that we have taken loans from Dotex. Exactly, this is what your reporter said. So if Rahul Gandhi is not aware of the loan, he is not aware whether his company Young India has taken loan from Dotex and the way they have taken loan from Dotex, I'm astonished as to how the spokesperson knows. Secondly, and most importantly, Rahul, all this issue, including the issue of Dotex, the payment ways, etc., went to 3 courts. It went to the High Court, it went to the trial court, it went to the Supreme Court. Despite all these pleas in front of the court by leading lawyers of the Congress party, remember Kapil Sibal, Abhishek Manu Singhvi, etc., were part of the legal eagle that were facing the courts. They could not convince the judges. What did the Supreme Court say? And I have the Indian Express's cutting for 2016. The Supreme Court said, after the Delhi High Court refused to squash the proceeding, the Gandhis moved the Supreme Court, which in 2016 directed all the accused persons to face criminal proceedings so that there could be a free trial. This is what was the Supreme Court's takeaway. I mean, the Indian Express has read so in 2016.
No, but
so
this
for
is
God's
a very
sake, if there is
specific
any
matter. No, one second.
the best way.
If Kolkata has multiple shell companies, Dr. Patra, the BJP in a press conference has leveled a charge. If that transaction happened through check, returned by check, with interest being paid, then that raises questions about the charge that you leveled. You saying, how did Rahul Gandhi know? How does the government know if that's between the investigating agency and the accused?
No. Can I please come in?
Yes, Supriya, go on.
Can I please come in? I don't know if the BJP spokesperson or the minister. It's my turn to speak, please. It's my turn to speak.
One at a time. Supriya.
It's astonishing that the BJP spokesperson says, how do I know? It doesn't take a lot. Young India has directors. It's registered with the registrar of companies. Its accounts are duly audited by the income tax department. You have all the details. You can go to ROC, you have to pay a minimum fee, and you can get details of any company that you want to. So if you do not know, it shows your ignorance. आपको नहीं पता ये आपकी गलती है. आपकी मंत्री आकर वहाँ पर एक शगुफा छोड़कर चली जाती है. ये आपकी गलती है. Young India has been duly audited by the income tax department. There is a registrar of companies. Everything is maintained with them, and that is where I'm quoting from. A 1 crore loan was taken at 14%. Money was returned. But anyways, I want to take this debate a little forward. What is this whole issue about? What are the charges? 8-year-old charges of money laundering, summons being issued now. We have no issues with that. The reason why we have issues is that Young India is a company that's formed under Section 25 of the Old Companies Act. मुझे तो यहाँ पर अगर बीजेपी के प्रवक्ता ये बता दें कि नई कंपनीज एक्ट में वो कौन सा सेक्शन है, सेक्शन 8 है उनकी जानकारी के लिए, तो मैं मान जाती. उसके तहत no shareholder, no director, nobody can be paid even a paisa's dividend. No salary, no profit, no remuneration from there. How, when no money, no asset has been transferred, are there charges of money laundering? You are making a mockery of the system. You are making a mockery of the law. AJL had 90 crore loans.
Can I come in, please?
Okay. That loan was converted into equity like it is done in corporate India, like it is done for multiple companies. The Indian law gives provision for that. And let me tell you, after the 90 crore
it's not that simple. It's not that simple because 76% of the equity. 76% of the equity was owned by Rahul Gandhi and Sonia Gandhi. Madam, they are not the Congress party. That is the other reality.
So, they are directors on the Young India board. What do you mean they are not the Congress party?
How do you, one second, a party, I'm going to let Sambit Patra respond to that. A party is a political entity. These are individuals. So effectively, assets taken from a political entity have been transferred to individuals, but let Sambit Patra respond to that.
You're wrong there. Young India is where there is no asset transfer.
Rahul, I did not shout and interrupt anyone in the middle of their version.
Supriya, you made a point.
Thank you.
Supriya, you made a point. Let Sambit speak.
Registrar of companies
Rahul, first and foremost, as to Rahul, I did not disturb anyone. This is not the way of your debating. Thank you so much, Rahul. Rahul, number one. See, as far as the income tax, the audition of the income tax, etc. is concerned, is it not true that Rahul Gandhi did not in his 2011-12 income tax exhibits, did not in fact explain that did not disclose that he was one of the directors of the Young India Private Limited? And how much shareholding he was doing in Young India Private Limited, and that's the reason as to why there was a notice sent by the income tax that whether you are a director in Young India Private Limited, to which an affirmative answer was given by Rahul Gandhi, to which the income tax department said that since you are a director and since in fact there have been transactions, why this was not disclosed in your income tax disclosures, and that's the reason as to why he has attracted the
why did you make that charge
and the enforcement director in question. Number one. Number two. As far as all these charges are concerned, Dotex, is it not true that when Dotex was in fact questioned by the ED, Dotex agreed to the fact that they are shell companies and they have converted Hawala money into checks and checks into Hawala money? This is what Dotex does, and they have accepted that to the ED. Rahul, first and foremost, this is not the way of debate, Rahul. I have never shouted in the middle of anyone. I never shouted and interrupted the Congress spokesperson. I mean, if she's so proud in celebrating corruption, why couldn't she be the one? Why did they send Kapil Sibal to represent the Congress party? Our learned spokesperson from Congress party should have been representing the Congress and the Sonia and Rahul the family. In the Supreme Court, the Supreme Court said that you have to face it. Just a second. You are puerile, ma'am. Okay. Don't shout in the middle and don't interfere. Have some mannerisms, please. Have some mannerisms. I never shouted in the middle. Hold on.
No, Supriya, this is not fair. You wanted
Rahul,
somebody to listen to you carefully
this is not the
and
way.
quietly.
This
Now
is-
you're interrupting.
she's
You're not
no
being fair.
headmistress.
We're giving you a full opportunity to speak.
interrupting him.
Just
I'm not
you're heckling
interrupting
him. You're
him.
not letting him speak.
No, I'm
Just
not.
pause that thought
I'm
for a
not
moment. I want to
interrupting
go
you.
across to Siddharth Zarabi,
I'm not
who will now
interrupting you.
try and deconstruct this tutu meme and give our viewers a sense of the charge, how the money, the assets moved, the Congress's defense, and the charges leveled by the BJP. Siddharth, over to you.
Thanks, Rahul. This story really is about 5,000 shareholders pre-1947, a company going to a Section 25 not-for-profit company owned by 4 young Indians, and that young Indians is, of course, in inverted commas. 1930s was when Associated Journals was set up. The stated objective of business was to publish a newspaper, and that newspaper continued to run till 2008. And in 2008, this newspaper shut down, nothing wrong about that. And a loan of just about over 90 crore rupees was extended by a political party to a commercial entity called AJL, which by then had apparently reduced its number of shareholders to 1,000 shareholders, and that was given as an interest-free loan. So remember this, there are basically 3 steps that are very key to understand this story. A couple of years later, in the month of November of 2010, a not-for-profit Section 25 company, a trust was formed. It was called Young Indian, and it had 4 shareholders, of which an overwhelming majority, not 74%, 76% was with Sonia Gandhi and Rahul Gandhi, and the other 2 shareholders, apparently there was a third, but as per records, 2 shareholders, Motilal Vora, long-time treasurer of the party, as well as Oscar Fernandez, and apparently Sam Pitroda. We don't know a confirmation on that. In the month of December that same year, that entire loan was transferred from AJL, Associated Journals, to Young Indians. Now please, I'll take 30 seconds to explain. The Congress extends a loan to an entity which admittedly is an old entity, has published a newspaper, all shareholders were freedom fighters, and that loan mysteriously gets assigned to a trust with just 4 shareholders, with the Gandhis being majority, having an overwhelming majority over the board, over every single decision. And what is the Congress doing there? The Congress passes a resolution, it writes off the entire loan. Young Indian acquires the entire loan for 50 lakhs. So you could call it a private insolvency mechanism, bankruptcy mechanism of the Congress party. Was any valuation done to acquire 90 crore at 50 lakh? We don't know the answers to that. And finally, by February of 2011, and that's the next crucial date really, Rahul, this company, AJL, becomes a subsidiary in a way of a trust called Young Indians. No newspaper is ever published after that. There is a significant amount of real estate. You could argue about whether it is 2,000 crore or 1,000 crore, but it is standing real estate in prime locations, in prime cities, and therefore there are several questions. The ED investigation, and this is the last point, Rahul, I want to intervene here on, is a separate matter. The fundamental questions around the assignment of a loan, a takeover, its valuation, a freedom fighters owned company becoming a sort of trust owned by just a few individuals who were not freedom fighters, is the crux of the story, Ram.
Okay, thanks Siddharth. I want to go to Sanjay Hegde, because the Gandhis say in their defense after listening to Siddharth's explanation that no money was taken out, that it's not as if the 1,000 or 2,000 crore rupee of real estate assets which the trust owns were sold, so the Gandhis haven't benefited. That is their logic. But essentially, you've taken what belonged to the Congress party and transferred it to 4 individuals, 76% of that stake owned by Rahul Gandhi and Sonia Gandhi, and that claim is wrong. It's definitely improper. Whether it is illegal still needs to be established in a court of law. Sanjay Hegde.
Well, that's what Mr. Swamy has been trying to establish for quite some time. That has not happened. Now the ED has stepped in with a separate case. I do wonder whether the ED has jurisdiction. As somebody asked, if there has been no money transferred in that sense, where is the question of money laundering? But yes, the ED is all powerful. It gets into everything. Now let me, I was quite listening to Mr. Zarabi's prosecutorial tendencies. I must compliment him for having a very prosecutorial tone of voice. But at the end of the day, the story which I can see is that what was a unit of the Congress party, in as much as the Congress shareholders ran a company which was rendered defunct. It had substantial loans. Primarily, the workers had to be paid off and all that. That was paid off. Then by a certain mechanism, people who are in charge of the Congress, or 4 people who were in charge of the Congress at that point of time, continued to exercise control. Now, this may be a chartered accountant's wet dream that, oh, this particular section and this and that has not been complied with. But at the end of the day, the story is that what was an asset of the Congress remains with the Congress.
Not really. What was an asset of the Congress is now an asset of 4 individuals, Sonia Gandhi, Rahul Gandhi, Oscar Fernandez and Motilal Vora, which might be improper.
The Congress party, now just do not interrupt me. I mean, give me the same courtesy that you gave Sambit Patra. Has the Congress party in any manner raised any objection?
Okay, so let me put that question then to Sambit Patra, that if at all the Congress party has been cheated, Rahul and Sonia are taking over assets that belong to the Congress party. That is wrong, that is improper. In the eyes of the Congress worker, they may be condemned. The Congress isn't condemning them, but there is no money laundering. No money has been taken out, and therefore they may have cheated the Congress of some assets and turned them into private assets for a trust, but it's not as if money laundering has happened or that they've taken money out, of this. Sambit Patra.
Rahul, first and foremost, there are certain wrong assumptions over here. Let me correct these assumptions. Number one, who said that AJL was a Congress's asset? AJL was formed in 1930s, 1937 to be precise, with the donations of 5,000 freedom fighters. To say that it is Congress's asset is absolutely wrong. Government of India then donated lands in the prime properties of various cities, Indore, Bhopal, New Delhi, Lucknow, etc., which may be 2,000 crore or 5,000 crore, depending on the asset evaluation. So it was never a Congress's property, nor was it Jawaharlal Nehru's individual property. Number two, remember, as far as the shareholding pattern is concerned, the shareholding from 5,000 post 2008 changed to 1,057 individuals. Was there a board meeting before dissolution and before passing these shares to Young India? Were the shareholders taken into confidence? Of course, no. Justice Markandeya Katju and Mr. Santi Bhushan, the former law ministers, did not they submit in writing a complaint about the fact that this 1,057, in fact, shareholders were not taken into confidence, and all this 99% of share was transferred without their knowledge? The letter is available in public domain. Was it not noted? Was it not noted by the Delhi High Court? What did the Delhi High Court say? It says it also needs to be answered as to why the genuine shareholders were marginalized in the extraordinary general meeting, which was attended by just 7 shareholders. Just 7 shareholders decide the fate of 99% of share without taking into confidence the other shareholders.
That is improper. And
most importantly,
but
what is the highest?
Just a second, Sambit, that is true and probably improper. But what you need to establish in a PMLA case, this is a prevention of money laundering case. In this case, what the ED will need to establish, Sambit Patra, is money laundering. Was money taken out? And I think especially if what Supriya said on Dotex is true. Okay, let Supriya make her argument, then we'll come back to Sambit for a counter. You heard what Sambit Patra is saying.
Can I complete? You asked me a question.
Okay, because both are speaking at the same time, and that's very problematic. Just one at a time. 10 seconds to Sambit to complete, then Supriya, Shrinesh, and then I see Aman Lekhi come back. Yes.
Remember one thing, there's a very important point. There's a very important point that we are missing out. we are missing out from the High Court, which needs to be established over here. The High Court asks if 90 crore worth loan of the AJL had to be paid. They had 2,000 crore worth properties. Why not liquidate a small part of the property and pay off the loans, rather than transferring it to just 2 individuals with 76% of stakeholding in Young India Limited? And as far as money laundering is concerned,
is because what belonged to 1,057 freedom fighters and their families, without discussion with the stakeholders, is transferred to 4 individuals: Sonia Gandhi, Rahul Gandhi, Motilal Vora and Oscar Fernandez. That by itself, that you'll conflate everybody's interests with the Gandhi family's own interests, does sound highly dubious. Respond to Sambit Patra.
No, so I have an issue with the word that you're consistently using, improper. There is nothing improper. If you understand companies law and if you understand how shareholding works, debt does get transferred into equity. AGL had a debt of 90 crore rupees. A loan
Madam,
was
that is not the point that we are making.
Party.
There were interests of 1,057 shareholders involved. No, you can't hector us on not understanding company law or shareholding patterns and somehow assume that what you're saying is superior. That's not fair. There were 1,057 shareholders involved. Their interests collapsed to the individual interests of 4 individuals: Sonia Gandhi, Rahul Gandhi, and 2 people close to the party, Motilal Vora and Oscar Fernandez. That I'm saying is improper. You can't take away from that.
No, this is not improper, and I hope you will now give me time to speak.
Yes, you must.
Accuse me by making counter arguments while I'm talking. Offer me the courtesy that you're offering everybody else. That's all that I'm asking you. I am saying that company law, companies in India, and the legal provisions in this country do make the provision for a loan for debt being transferred into equity. That is what happened with AJL. Please understand that. It is very simple if you want to. AJL took a loan from the Congress party of 90 crore. The Congress party wrote off that loan. आपके जैसे नहीं 8 लाख करोड़ पूंजीपतियों का राइट ऑफ किया जैसे सरकार ने किया है, मोदी सरकार ने. Congress party wrote off a 90 crore loan. That loan was transferred into equity. And I'm sorry, I had an issue with what Mr. Zarabi was saying. What is sort of? What happened? It's a Section 25 company, not for profit company. It cannot maximize profit. It cannot be remunerated. Nobody gains from that. So please do not quote judgments out of context, because I can quote the High Court judgment which goes on to raise questions on the very character of the complainants here. So please do not do that. There was a loan taken, which was the debt was converted into equity, which was not for profit. Income tax returns were filed. They have been audited. This is a registrar for companies. What are we talking about? We are talking about not the case per se. This is nothing but political vendetta. 7 साल से केस आपके पास है. समझ आपको अब याद आया इशू करना. सबसे पहली बात. और दूसरी बात, आपने पी चिदम्बरम जी का 1 मिनट, I want to make the political point here. आपने पी चिदम्बरम जी की हड्डियां तोड़ दी. आपने प्रमोद तिवारी जी की पसलियां तोड़ी. आपने शक्ति सिंह गोहिल जी के सर पे वार किया. आपने केसु वेणुगोपाल के कपड़े फाड़े. Is that what Delhi police are assigned to do? I want to understand. आपको नहीं पता है, सारी दुनिया को पता है, आपको नहीं पता है. यहाँ पर अगर आप बेशर्मी करिएगा, आप
Okay, so Aman Lekhi, we've heard the political rhetoric. You've had an opportunity to look at the documents as they exist in the public domain. You're hearing the charges and the counter charges. The facts suggest that A, money physically wasn't taken out. No asset has been sold, so it's not as if they've benefited. The money laundering charge Supriya responds to by saying that this is a company belonging to a big industrial group and that money transfers happened via check. That can very easily be established through ROC documents and through public declarations. The critical point is, does the deal stink? Is this a scam or is this vendetta? How are you reading this?
Well, you've gone back and forth, and the respective spokespersons have been at each other's throats, and we still don't know what the actual issue is, and that's precisely why you conduct an investigation. This is an inquiry, it's an investigation. This is statutorily mandated. The person who's supposed to answer is Rahul Gandhi. It's neither the spokesperson for the BJP nor that of the Congress is relevant. What your own correspondent said is that Mr. Rahul Gandhi is finding it difficult to respond. I don't know whether it's right or wrong. We are not concerned with that. But nevertheless, the issue which I want to flag here is that when a law enforcing agency commences an investigation, we are not in a clockocracy in which we intimidate an agency by actually having these protests which are more or less pan-India, because the Congress has been on the forefront tom-tomming the worth of rule of law. And if rule of law has to prevail, the person who, according to the Congress's spokesperson, has not committed a wrong and is before the investigating agency can easily put the matter to rest by responding clearly and comprehensively to the allegations which have been made. As far as the case is concerned, it's quite obvious that there is a fair element of dubiousness in it. Question is, why was the loan given? Circumstances in which the loan was given. This will be number one. And why was the loan not paid? If the loan was not paid, much emphasis is made on transforming loan into equity. Then why the transforming loan into equity to Young India, where 76% of the interest is held by Rahul Gandhi and Sonia Gandhi? We talk about National Herald, we talk about the freedom fighters, etc. The point is the freedom fighters are long gone. The entity is not what was there pre-independence. We are now with the company which is in fact dominated by two. As those two are concerned, they have to answer. Summons have gone to them. What I read in the newspaper was that the occasion for this particular summons was that they have examined others. If others have been examined, the matter is before investigating agency. The investigating agency has the right to call. The person called is obliged to answer, and the question of answering cannot be thwarted by reason of these particular protests. And if the case is that open and shut, it's not as if the Congress is not well advised. You can easily resort to a court of law, challenge the summons, quash the proceedings, and say, as being rather emphatically mentioned by the Congress spokesperson, it is motivated. Because if it is motivated in malafide, the easiest option is to go to court. Now, question is, why are you not going to court and resorting to street protests? Obviously, they are afraid of something, because if you're that sure of your position, might as well test it in a court of law, which is the best place to do it.
Okay, let Supriya Srinath respond that you are trying to intimidate the Enforcement Directorate. You should follow the rule of law, not turn it into a tamasha. Answer clearly and comprehensively the questions that have been asked. And why don't you just go to a court of law instead of hitting the streets?
I don't understand. Are you or anybody else or the BJP and its supporters and its affiliates, some of whom have affiliations with the BJP here, are they going to now come and preach us what can we protest against or not protest against? I think protesting on the streets of Delhi or anywhere is a fundamental right that all of us enjoy. And we can choose when we want to protest. We want to protest against the ED in a completely Gandhian peaceful way. What is the government doing? The government is lathi charging. You are beating up our people. You have broken the ribs of P. Chidambaram. You have broken the ribs of Pramod Tiwari, who's just been nominated to the Rajya Sabha, a tall leader from UP. Shakti Singh Goel has been hurt on the head. KC Venugopal was not just manhandled, his clothes were torn. Is that what you call coming down with an iron hand? Is that what you do to India's prime opposition? And what was our conduct? We were simply marching peacefully against the ED summons with Rahul Gandhi. And this is what you do to people. This is what you do to elected representatives. Little less what you do to the others. The reality is कि श्रीलंका में तो जाके आप अडानी का कहते हैं इनको भैया कॉन्ट्रैक्ट दे दो, मोदी जी खुद कहते हैं, वो सच सामने आ जाता है. आप लोगों का बुलडोजर से घर तोड़ते हैं, उसका सच सामने आ जाता है. आपको लगता है जैसे आप लोगों के ऊपर अतिक्रमण करिएगा, लोगों को मारिएगा, वो आप कांग्रेस पार्टी के साथ भी करिएगा. No, don't come in. Answer the specific question that I'm asking you. Why are you manhandling people?
Okay, let Samvit Patra respond. Why couldn't the Congress be allowed in their wisdom, for good or for bad, to protest? Why should senior leaders face this kind of physical pushback from the police? Okay, now Supriya, you've spoken. Let him speak, please.
Rahul, number one, there's a very important point which, in fact, the Congress spokesperson mentioned, and we missed it out. The most important point is that at some point of time, because they had certain emotive bond with AJL, Associated Journal Ltd, the Congress wrote off the loan. My question is, the Congress could have written off the loan well before the formation of Young India. There was no need for the equity to be transferred to the Young India if this emotive bond existed right from the very beginning. The 90 CR loan that was given to Rahul, I never interjected. Rahul, can I please complete? You did not.
That's true. Let him complete, Supriya.
Rahul, if they really had good intentions, they wanted to continue with their emotive bond, they could have easily written off the loan well before the formation of Young India, and this transfer of property of AJL to Young India would not have taken place. So the malafide is absolutely clear. Number two, as far as, Amanji is a very proclaimed lawyer, but probably Amanji, as far as these Congress people are concerned, they had gone to the court. It's not that they had not gone to the court. They had gone to the trial court, the High Court, and then the Supreme Court. But all the three courts refused to squash the case. And that's the reason as to why, left with no other option, theatrics they felt was the best option. So they took to celebrating corruption, and they took the launch pad, in fact the launch pad of the streets of Delhi, to relaunch Rahul Gandhi. Because the Congress party thought that this is an opportunity, why not celebrate corruption and relaunch Rahul Gandhi? Because Rahul Gandhi, in fact, we had these 5 state elections, 5 seats to inko mili nahi hai. So they wanted to use this launch pad. I mean, this is the exact thing that the Congress party is trying to do. It's not that the Congress party does not know what is the legality of the case. Well, yes, Aman was absolutely right. They would have gone to the Supreme Court. They would have made the court open in the midnight. The courts would have opened in the midnight and heard
no,
them.
Now we're on political rhetoric.
They did not go to the court because
Aman
they
Lekhi,
lost the case
the
in the
critical
court
point
already.
here is whether or not the Enforcement Directorate can establish money laundering. Because yes, taking an asset that belonged to 1,057 shareholders, ultimately transferring it to 4, Sonia and Rahul owning 76% of it as part of this trust may seem improper. Those 1,057 shareholders could have a problem. None of their families have spoken. But the Congress says, A, no money was taken out, so the Gandhis haven't benefited, and B, that this is an internal Congress matter. It has nothing to do with the BJP. Sambit Patra can be upset, but none of the Congress people who were part of the shareholding group are saying anything. So why is Sambit Patra and the BJP so worried? Aman Lekhi.
No, it is not for the person who is accused to actually proclaim innocence. It is for the investigating agency to verify it. As far as any accused is concerned, at any point of time, the accused is bound to say that he has not done anything wrong. The question here is that the circumstances, in fact, suggest some element of wrongdoing. Now, whether the wrongdoing actually makes out an offence or not is the domain of the investigating agency. We are at the stage right now only of investigation. Now, who's to investigate? We are hearing a point and a counterpoint of the respective spokespersons. You are trying to grapple with this particular controversy. Is this the forum? Which is the correct forum for doing this? The correct forum for doing this is investigating agency. And if supposing you feel that what the investigating agency is doing is wrong currently, I'm not talking about what has happened in the past. It's not as if you are bereft of a legal remedy. Take a legal remedy. If you choose not to take a legal remedy, and you choose in fact to use the television or the street as a method of communicating, obviously it feels that they've got something to hide because you don't want to test it on legal principles. The very straightforward thing would be test it on legal principles and show that you are right.
Let Sanjay Hegde tell us what he thinks. This point that Aman Lekhi makes, that we can never establish in a court of law because we don't have the DOTEX documents in front of us just yet. There's a charge, there's a counter charge. Ultimately, if they thought the summons from the ED were inappropriate, they could have gone and challenged it in a court. The court could have quashed the summons possibly, and that's the right way to do it, not to turn this into a tamasha and try and intimidate the investigating agency.
Okay,
so
just for the benefit of your... just for the benefit of your viewers, let me put facts in perspective. First, there is a criminal complaint filed by Subramaniam Swamy that's still pending in the Patiala House courts. Those are separate proceedings. All the High Court and Supreme Court which Mr. Patra quoted pertain to that part of the case. Now, in the meanwhile, the ED also decides that it has to get involved. Does it have the jurisdiction? Does it not have the jurisdiction? Why was it not challenged in courts? That's for the Congress to decide. But it does seem to me, and Sambit Patra somewhat indicated it, when he said that this was a relaunching of Rahul Gandhi. So it does seem to me to be a cynical game where, in the words of a Kannada proverb, one party pretends to hit and the other party pretends to cry. This just is drama for the public. And the ED has much to answer for, because as an institution, the ED is losing its credibility. It's been overused in all kinds of political cases. And quite frankly, I don't see how you have got the questions which the ED is proposing to put to Rahul Gandhi. If that was the case, all that they needed to do was to put up all the questions in public on a website somewhere, and Rahul Gandhi or somebody on his behalf could have answered. Why do you need all this tamasha? If the questions are available with if they are available with the press,
then what's the...
Okay, I'm running out of time. Both Sambit and Supriya want to make final comments. I'm going to come back to you, Supriya, last. But let me go across to Sambit and get him to respond first, and then I'll come back to you on the multiple probes, right? You've got the matter filed by Subramaniam Swamy already before the Patiala court, which is already being heard, and now you've got other agencies coming in suggesting, as Supriya suggests, that this is a political attack against the Gandhi family because you want to pin them down and show them as crooks, and therefore you've got the agency going after them.
No, why would we pin the Gandhis down and show them as crook? 76%, if 1057 shareholding goes to only 2 individuals with 76% of shareholding, of course there would be questions. And remember, Rahul, the Congress party cannot get away by saying that this is an internal matter of Congress, because the land in the Bahadur Shah Zafar area where the National Herald's office stands is not Congress's property. The land in Bhopal, the land in Lucknow, the land in Indore, the land across the country which is worth 2,000 to 5,000 crore is not Congress's property. It is your, mine and all the income taxes property. That's why it is not Congress's issue. And what I am left aghast with is the statement of Pramod Tiwari. Pramod Tiwari says that Mr. Modi, Mr. Amit Shah, the BJP and we all are Kale Angrej. We are dark Angrej, and Congress party and Rahul Gandhi Kale Angrejo ke khilaf lad rahe hain. Are we Kale Angrej? Does that rake of racism? Who would apologize for this?
Okay.
Is Mr. Modi, just because Sonia Gandhi belongs to Italy, is Mr. Modi Kala Angrej? What kind of language?
Now respond to the substantive point about land being gifted by the government of the day to Associated Journals, and therefore if ultimately through a roundabout transaction it gets transferred 76% to Sonia and Rahul Gandhi, the public has the right to know ki dal mein kuch kala tha kya? How can land given by the government ultimately end up with individuals?
I urge you to listen to me for the next 5 seconds, because it is important for your viewers to understand this. No asset was transferred from AJL to Young India. The assets belong to AJL. The 1057 shareholders continue to be shareholders. कोई asset transfer ही नहीं हुआ है. Sonia Gandhi, Rahul Gandhi, Oscar Fernandez and Motilal Bora were shareholders in Young India, where the asset has not been transferred. The premise of the argument is wrong. जब asset transfer ही नहीं हुआ है AJL से Young India में, तो किस asset का झुंझुना बजा रहे हैं आप सब लोग? मुझे समझ में नहीं आ रहा है.
99% of share of AJL has gone to Young India. What does that mean?
No, it has not.
Explain that. 99% of share of Young India. I mean, he's acquired 99% of share of AJL. What does this mean? कुछ हुआ नहीं है, कुछ हुआ नहीं है is not going to absolve the Gandhis.
पहले अंग्रेजों के साथ खड़े थे, आप हमारे नेताओं को पिटवा रहे हो, बीच में हैकिल कर रहे हो, चुप रहिए ना. आपको तो हैकिल मैंने नहीं.
ना अभी काला अंग्रेज. नहीं अभी काला अंग्रेज. नहीं अभी काला अंग्रेज. I'm really taken aback that we are kala अंग्रेज. अभी काला अंग्रेज just because Sonia Gandhi belongs to Italy. Just because she belongs to Italy, अभी काला अंग्रेज.
And Rahul Kanwal, you don't want
to अभी काला अंग्रेज. Do you support this statement of Pramod Tiwari?
I'm simply saying, आप अंग्रेजों से भी बदतर है, जो सलूक आप
देशवासियों के साथ कर रहे हैं. This reeks of racism. You all should apologize for this racist statement against the Indian Prime Minister that he is a kala अंग्रेज.
तो मुझे मत बताइए, आप अंग्रेजों से भी बदतर है. आप काला गोरा अंग्रेज छोड़ दीजिए, आप अंग्रेजों से बदतर है.
Okay, one second. Here's what we know so far from this investigation to respond to the point that Supriya Srinath makes, that Young India is currently 99% owner of Associated Journal after the equity conversion, and you got massive real estate which belongs to Associated Journal, and therefore if Young India is the owner of AJL, that raises multiple questions. But I think, as Aman Lekhi made the point very importantly, these matters cannot be decided on a television channel. This is not a court of law. You'll have an argument, you'll have a counter argument. The way to resolve this is by appearing before the agency, answering the questions, and then challenging it in court if required and quashing the case. If you believe that there is no case, quash it. That is ultimately what needs to be done. We'll track this story very carefully. You decide whether the Congress scored a big punch today, or was it just a misfired attack. We leave it to you to decide.